good day everyone. So we are here to tackle about the historical foundation of education. The learning outcomes to state the relationship of society and schools. Prove that schools transmit cultural values by stating facts from education history in the world and in the Philippines. Explain the meaning of socialization as a function of schools. So the historical foundation of education is more specifically, let us try to know or recall our practices in our classroom and even the methods that we use in our teaching. And let us try to figure out where did they originate or where did they came from. But we should be like what I said, we should be coming up with the historical foundation of education. And the first thing that we have to understand is why do we have such term as education? And why do we have school everywhere? So when we speak education, this is actually an institution that is created by the society. It is an institution primarily created so that the student young generation will be developed and so that they may be able to survive in this fast changing world, so that they may be able to find security and stability at the same time, so that they may able to experience convenience. And at the same time, the school introduces and trains each child of society with the spirit of service and effective self-direction. The words I would like to emphasize in the particular definition of school is a spirit of service and effective self-direction. At the same time, school is tasked to impart specific knowledge and skills necessary for functioning in the society and tasked to transmit society's cultural values. Primitive education. Life among primitive or tribal people was very simple compared with the complex life that people have today. Their means of livelihood were hunting and gathering wild fruits and vegetables. There was no reading or writing, and information was transmitted through word of mouth, songs, gestures, ceremonial, rites, and the like. So, meaning there was no books to read before. The aims of education. So, the first one is security and survival. Since the fundamental problem then was still alive to protect oneself and their family from the destructive forces of nature or from dangers that could be inflicted by natural phenomena such as typhoon, floods, earthquakes, and etc., or by fierce, wild, and poisonous animals and reptiles such as lions, tiger, snakes and rats, or even evil spirits. Hunger because of scarcity, foods, and other tribes which we hostile to them. The second one is conformity. Conformity brought together their families, clans, and tribes so that they could conquer common dangers. Primitive people had been able to survive by subordinating the interests of the individual interests of the group. Primitive education aimed at securing the continued existence of their groups by restricting the activities of its members, unlike complex and democratic cultures where education seek to achieve social security by increasing the intelligence, skills, and freedom. Lastly is preservation and transmission of traditions. The ways they were doing things were the best and they want to preserve it and be transmitted to the incoming generation. Some characteristics of primitive culture. First is relatively simple, relatively narrow social and cultural conducts, extraordinary conservative and prone to superstitions. The organization of primitive life is tribal, not political, so that one function of education is to enable one to live with his relatives And lastly, absence from primitive cultures of reading and writing. Types of education. First is vocational. This includes learning the skills in procuring basic necessities of life, like hunting, constructing a hut, and etc. The second one is religious animistic, consisted in learning how to participate in ritualistic practices to please or to appease the unseen spirit roaming around.
Hello everyone, I am Saison Hazel. From this chapter, we will be discussing about the key periods in educational history back from 7000 BC up until 1600 AD, in which we will be learning about how education and school became the backbone of the society and how school reflect the nature and the character of the society itself. So let's begin from the primitive societies, in which their educational goal is to teach their group about survival skills to cultivate group cohesiveness. So basically, the young individuals back from this period are taught about informal education or the practical skills, the hunting, food gathering, fishing, and they are also taught about songs, dance, myths, and stories. The main purpose of their education back from this period is that they want to guide the children to become a better member of their tribe and or their band. So their teacher back from this period are their parents and their tribe leaders as well. Next is in the Greek. In the Greek period of educational history, it is classified into two forms of education. The informal education, which is said that it is provided with unpaid teacher, occurred in non-public setting. And in the other hand, the formal education is those provided with a hired tutor. So, the educational goal in the Greek period is to cultivate civic responsibility and identity with city-state. Um, Also, the Greek period are classified into two systems, the Athenian system and the Spartan system. First is the Athenian system, which is, it is said that it has a two major parts, the physical and intellectual, and it was known for Athenians as gymnastic and mousike. So the gymnastic is the physical education and is mirrored as the ideals of military, the strength, the stamina, and the preparation for war. And in the other hand, the mousike was a combination of modern day music, lyric, poetry. So, the educational goal of the Athenian system is to develop well-rounded person. And if we say a well-rounded person, it is described as those um, who have skilled capability or knowledge for in different things and with a personality which is fully developed in all aspects. So, in the other hand, the Spartan system is to develop soldiers and military leaders because the purpose of the Spartan system is they want to build a um, better and powerful army. The third one is the Roman educational history. The Roman education was based on the Greek classical tradition, but it is infused with Roman cosmology um, and religious belief. But it is also said that only a rich children are allowed to be educated since their family will employ a teacher for their children. So basically, um, from the Roman period, not all children are well educated. And it is also said that boys and girls from Roman period or did not receive an same education, since it is believed that boys are given a lesson with honorability and more on physical training, since it is considered as a preparation for man's rule in the society and in the army. And in the other hand, the girls are only allowed to learn about how to write and how to read. So the educational goal of the Roman period is to develop sense of civic responsibility for republic and then empire, and to develop administrative and military skills. Next in line is the Arabic period, in which their educational goal is to cultivate religious commitment to Islamic beliefs and to develop expertise in mathematics in the field of medicine and in science as well. So basically, the goal of the curriculum in this Islamic tradition is not just to masterize the subject matter, but also to be pious or being makajos by their nature, since they are religiously committed. And the aim and the main objective of the Islamic tradition or education is that to provide teaching of the Quran or the Holy Quran as their primary source of education. Here in medieval period, the church had played a significant role, since it was the church, the bishops, and the monks who continued teaching and learning classical subjects such as grammar, rhetoric, and logic. And it is said that girls and women at the age of 7 to 20 are entering religious community. So the educational goal in here in this period is to develop religious commitment, knowledge, and ritual, to reestablish social order as well, and to prepare persons for appropriate roles. Then to the last is the Renaissance period. So their goal in here is to cultivate a humanist who was expert in the classics, the Greek and Latin. So the education in the Renaissance period was created with the humanist ideals. So basically, the Renaissance period is very much more focused on language and literature. Their basic education is dealt with grammatical lessons consisting of the ancient texts from moral, historical, and political contexts. Unlike from the other educational history, Renaissance period is Renaissance period viewed the society as a whole, in which individuals or each person have the have to be commonly educated, and wherein they value different opinions. Lastly is the Reformation period. So their goal in here is to cultivate a sense of commitment to a particular religious domination and to cultivate general literacy as well. So this period referred to a deliberating of the people's way of thinking, and it also the rise of the Protestantism. So the major principle of Protestantism that influenced their view on education was the idea of personal responsibility, because Protestantism believes that um, education should support the interest, the person's interest and the ability, rather than um, rather than the interest of the church itself.
Good morning. This is Clark Lawrence Giumenzidor from BTL Ed 2B. So, education during the pre-colonial period. So, children were provided more vocational training but lesser academics. Teachers were tribal tutors, Babaylan or Catalonan. Fathers taught their sons how to look for food and other means of livelihood. Mothers taught their girls to do the household chores. So basically, this education prepare their children to become good husband and wives. So children were provided more vocational training but lesser academics. Education during the Spanish era. So education was formal and organized. Tribal tutors of the pre-Spanish period were replaced by Spanish missionaries. Pupils attended formal schooling in the parochial school. Instruction was religion-oriented. So Christian doctrine, sacred songs, and music prayers. So because they were required for confession and communion. So there was a separate school for boys and girls. So let's say the Spanish era, siguro makukumpara natin na yung mga so yung mga nakakapag-aral dito ay yung mga mayayaman because wealthy Filipinos or the ilustrados were accommodated in schools. The curriculum included subjects reading, writing, arithmetic, history, Christian doctrine, Spanish language, vocal music, agriculture for the boys, and needlework for the girls. So attendance in school was compulsory between the age of 7 and 12. So the schools maintained by the Spaniards for more than 3 centuries were closed but were opened on August 29, 1898 by the Secretary of the Interior. So it is almost 300 years. Education during the American regime, 1898 to 1946. The Americans promoted democratic ideals and the democratic way of life. A system of free and compulsory elementary education was established by the Malolos Constitution. So as time goes by, siguro mahaba yung panahon uh, nalipas, makikita natin na unti-unting umuunlad ang edukasyon sa Pilipinas. So, Political Constitution of 1899. In May 1898, the first American school was established in Corregidor, and shortly after the capture of Manila in 1899, 7 schools were opened in the city. So, yun. Kita talaga natin yung improvement or the progress of the education of the Philippines. Thomasites arrived in the Philippines on August 23, 1901. The University of the Philippines was founded in 1908. So, UP was the first state school of university status. The Department of Public Instruction set up a 3-level school system. The first level considered a 4-year primary and 3-year intermediate or 7-year elementary curriculum. The second level was a 4-year junior college and later a 4-year program. So for now, so the Department of Education was there's a new program that for me that is so effective. So the program is the K to 12 program. So it allows or it gives the student to choose wisely what do you want in the college. Oh, so it helps them to prepare.
During the post-colonial Philippines, the aim of education is to realize that this is democratic ideals and the way of life. So, in the post-Philippines, there is a Republic Act 1079. It is approved in June 15, 1954. In this act stated that civil service eligibility for teachers shall be permanent and shall be valid throughout a person's lifetime. Also, in Republic Act 1265, in this act, it is mandated that all educational institutions shall implement and observe daily flag ceremony which includes the playing or singing of our national anthem. And this Republic Act was approved in June 11, 1955. In addition, all schools must offer curricular works and writing of Jose Rizal novel. So this is also called the Rizal Law or Republic Act 1425. So the courses on the life, works, and writings of Jose Rizal, particularly his novel No Limit Tangere and El Filibusterismo, shall be included in the curricula of all schools. So also in it is also included in college, university, public or private. So this is to give the students and the future generation an ample background and for them to understand about how Jose Rizal hands over his life for our country. And it is also presented in post-colonial Philippines. The Magna Carta for teachers was passed into law by virtue of Republic Act 4670. In this Magna Carta, provide and protect the beloved teachers, like the tenure of office, academic freedom, and such. It is also stated under 1973 Constitution that the aims of educational institution is to inculcate the love of country, teach the duties of citizenship, and development moral character. So in post-colonial Philippines, there are other developments that is included. The first one is the integration of values in learning areas. So the aim of this is it should develop through the teaching learning activities. It also aligns the people work towards different goals and intention and outcomes. And also it is also included the implementation of youth development training and citizen advancement training. On the other hand, it is also included the Ministry of Education and Culture and Sports, and it was created under Education Act of 1982 and renamed by former President Cory Aquino to the Department of Education, Culture and Sports or DECS in 1987. But in August 2001, under the Republic Act of 9115, the DECS or the Department of Education, Culture and Sports replaced and renamed into Department of Education. Also included in development is the implementation of college entrance examination. So this exam is administered or eligible for incoming first year college in all public and private universities or state colleges. Next is the creation of board examination for teachers under PRC. So teachers are given professional status upon passing the board exam, and currently it mandates the teacher should pass the licensure examination as administered by the Professional Regulation Commission. Also, the trifocalization of education system. It is refocused on DSCS mandate to basic education including elementary, secondary, non-formal education, culture, and sports. Also, it is implementing the TESDA under the Republic Act 7796 of 1994. So, as what I have said recently, um, in August 1, 2001, under the Republic Act 9115, replacement of DSCS or Department of Education, Culture and Sports renamed into Department of Education. Values education is offered as separate and new secondary education curriculum under the other developments during the post-colonial Philippines. To ensure effective implementation of values education, which is one of emphasis of the restructured basic education curriculum. It should be utilized to help and to develop values areas and integrate discipline. And the other development under the post Philippines is the Republic Act 10533 or the Enhanced Education Act of 2013, which is the implementation of K to 12. So this is compulsory to all schools to increase the number of years for basic education. So the enhanced basic education program encompasses at least 1 year of kindergarten, 6 years of elementary, 4 years of junior high school, and 2 years of senior high school.
Good morning. My report is all about Commonwealth period. So the Commonwealth period in 1935 to 1942. So the Commonwealth period of the Philippines administered the Philippines from 1935 until 1946. Aside from that, a period in 1942 to 1945 when the Japan occupied the country. So, free education in public school was provided all over the country in accordance with 1935 Constitution. In accordance with the 1935 Constitution, free education in public school was provided all over the country. Next, vocational education and some household activities like sewing, cooking, and farming were also given importance. In order to observe private school and its institute of private education was also established and formal adult education was given. So, President Manuel L. Quezon, who signed the Executive Order number 134 of 1936, starting steering Tagalog as our national language. So the first executive number 217, known as the Quezon Code of Ethics, was taught in school. So Executive Order number 217 that prescribe as a set of civic and ethics precept the collectivity known as the Code of Citizenship and Ethics to be taught in school in the Philippines. So the next executive was Order number 263 in 1940 requires teaching of the Filipino high school and senior high school are are in all years in the normal classroom. In 1940, Executive Order number 263 was issued during the teaching of the national language in all the public and the private school in the country, in order also to provide that the national language shall be taught as. So, next, August 7 for 1940, the Education Act of 1940 CA 5836, who was approved by the Philippines Assembly, which provided the following. So, the first is reduction of the 7 years elementary course to 6 years. So, pagbawas. So, from 7 years sa 7 years from elementary turn into 6 years. So, next, fixing the school entrance at age 7. National support for elementary education. Next, compulsory attendance of primary children enrolled in grade 1. Next, adoption of double single session in primary grade with one teachers. one class assignment of intermediate teachers. So next slide. So next is the Japan occupation. So make the people, so in Japan occupation, so the first is make the people understand the position of the Philippines as a member of East Asia co-prosperity sphere. Eradication of the idea of reliance upon Western state, particularly in US and the Great Britain. So the next is fostering a new Filipino culture based on the consciousness of the Filipino as Oriental. Next is elevating the moral of the Filipino, giving up over emphasis on materialism. So next, diffusion of elementary education and promotion of vocation education. So next is striving from the diffusion of the Japanese language of the Philippines and the termination of the use of English in school. So the last is to develop the Filipino love and labor. So that's all. Next.
Good day, I am Razul A. De La Serna. Today, we are going to talk about the history of the Philippine educational system, the varied goals of education in different historical periods of Philippine history, the pre-colonial period, the Spanish period, the American regime, the Japanese regime, and post-colonial period. Let us also see how the nature and character of Philippine society are reflected in the education processes in different periods of Philippine history. After watching this video, you will be able to trace the history of the Philippine educational system. As we talk about the history of the Philippine educational system, just to remember this sociological concept which is the focus of this lesson, that educational is function of a society, and such what are the thought in the school arise from the nature and character of the society itself. What society consider important is what school teach. Let us start with education during the pre-colonial period. Vocational training. Education was informal and unstructured, decentralized. This education basically prepared their children to become good husband and wife. Children provided more vocational training and lesser academics. As what should Mr. Mincidor said a while ago, the teacher were tribal tutors called babaylan or katalunan. Next is education during the Spanish era, the religious formation. Education was formal and organized. This time, schools focused on religious information to help them live the Christian faith. The instruction was religion-oriented. Now, let's move on to education during the American regime, 1898 to 1946. Promotes good citizens of democratic country. The American promotes ideas of the democratic way of life. The Japanese regime. The Japanese regime and promotes enrich the Filipinos culture at this time. The spreading of elementary and vocational education was also established. They changed the system for the better. The aims of education during Japanese regime make the people understand the position of the Philippines as a member of the East Asia. The post-colonial period. Educational system was devoted to the following goals. Number 1, foster love of country. Number 2, teach the duties of citizenship. Number 3, develop moral character, self-discipline. And number 4, scientific, technological, and vocational efficiency. Post-colonial period, the education aimed at the full of realization of the democratic ideas and way of life. The present depth vision and mission statement and core values and the fourth mission of the Commission on Higher Education add light to the present goals of Philippine education. They are given to produce truthful graduate embodied with number 1, values reflective of the humanist orientation. Number 2, analytical and problem-solving skills. Number 3, the ability to think through an ethical and social implication of a given source of action. Number 4, the competency to learn continuously throughout life. The importance of studying history. According to Dewey, the study of education history can help us to understand and solve today's problems. Realistic effort to reform education began with present conditions which are a product of our past. By using our past, we can shape the future. And last, the study of education past provides a perspective that explains and illuminates our present activities as a teacher. History of education is a fundamental importance of a professional teacher. When you study the past, you are able to understand the process of education and how it evolved up to the present. In this way, the present not only becomes clear but also helps to illuminate the future. History of education also helps one to draw a comparisons of the origins and development of several different ideas, practices, and theories. That's all. Thank you.